Let's stay
Definitely.
motivated. Let's stay focused and uplift ourselves if nobody else is doing.
Definitely.
That's very important. And we do have a very interesting person on the session with us. We just met like a few days ago. It was
Yes,
very amazing. So let me just bring him in, and then we can talk more about him.
definitely.
Here we are.
Hey, Ashish, how are
Hey,
you?
it's weird seeing another co-worker on the other side and go, hey.
Yeah, in the same time zone.
In the same time zone as well, yeah.
We do have a interesting talk from you coming up. So building security champion program in a hybrid world, which I think you're sharing your own personal wins and, not wins as well. I think we heard a really good talk from Randall.
People may cry after that as well.
Yeah, crying moments. That seems to be the theme today. I think Randall shared some of his as well. And it's just learning from each other and I guess failures and successes. So, we kind of don't make them ourselves. So, Will, we might throw to you for the talk. So take it away.
Sounds good. Awesome. Thank you for this opportunity. And thank you to everyone who's making this possible as well. Obviously, I just want to give a quick shout out to the awards thing as well. I'm definitely going to put my name in. So if you are looking at putting a name, I think what Vandana said is true. Just definitely don't forget to recognize the awesome work you're doing yourself as well. Correct. Over to you to talk. So today I'm talking about building security champions in a hybrid remote world. So the story is my personal story. I am a CISO and I've been a CISO for a while. And my most recent job where I work at the moment, I was doing the CISO work as a remote employee. Melbourne, where I'm based out of, went into lockdown and I got the job pretty much, I think a week before or something, and the entire country went into lockdown. So this is the story of what my shortcomings, so others can learn from it, and hopefully some of the things that worked for me, and I guess building a security champion program while I was in a semi-hybrid or full remote kind of world as well. Let's see if this works. Sweet. So a little bit about who I am. So I host the Cloud Security podcast, which Shilpi is the producer for, doing an awesome job clearly. And I'm also, as I mentioned, 9 to 5 is my CISO job. But outside of all that, I also create content for SANS, which is a popular cybersecurity institute, which has been providing cloud security information and cybersecurity information for years. So I'm a trainer there as well, teaching others CISOs how to do cloud security. So we are currently on the World Tour, and that's what Vandana was referring to. We kind of met a couple of days ago at RSA in San Francisco. Next stop is Boston. So for people who may be in Boston for AWS Reinforce, we'll see you there. All right. So just based on the little information that I have from people who are here, I'm just leveling up the playing field for folks who may or may not be familiar with the world of DevSecOps and what is it really you need for a security champions program. For people who are from a technical background, they might see a security champions program as making others do the right thing, which is kind of partly true, but the other half of it is kind of more soft skill in terms of how do you train other people who may not be from security on why they should do security and why it's the right thing to do. Now, a usual way a security leader, maybe an AppSec program lead or a CISO may go about this would be as part of the security strategy, they would have something called a DevSecOps program. And even though I might go through the entire slide deck and seems like hey, 30 minutes and you have a DevSecurity Champions program, what I would call out, we have been working on this for the past couple of years and we still feel we're still scratching the surface. So it does take time. So that's why it's a program. And similarly for Security Champions program, I would say it is a subset of DevSecOps program where you have your DevSecOps tool, and you can check out Sneak as well. They have a great tool which kind of integrates really well into that space, but there are others as well that you can look into. The idea from a tooling perspective, that's great from a security folks, but ultimately, and this is where for people who haven't been sick of hearing the shift left word, there's a reason why this is still being used is because we're trying to call out the fact that security teams need to have these kind of tools, whether it's Sneak or any other security product that are out there that can integrate into a CI/CD pipeline. And for people who don't know what CI/CD pipeline is, that's what a lot of people use to automate a lot of the deployments of their software on either a cloud or a non-cloud product version for other customers to use. So hopefully that kind of gives you some idea for what Shift Left and DevSecOps program and Security Champions program is. And the DevSecOps beta, everyone has a different definition of it. But I think the simplest way to define it probably is, and I'm going to really simplify it without any of the technical jargons, if you're looking at automating the deployment of a product, like suppose you have a new app that you want to download or maybe you want to release onto the Apple App Store, how do you make it happen, say, within a week? That sounds almost like an impossible task if the App Store, there are really a lot of complications around it. But the DevSecOps idea is instilled from DevOps, which is around automation. And how do you release products faster into the market? And DevSecOps is integrating security into it because, as always, I'm going to do a bad joke over here. Guess what the security people told the developers? Nothing. So that's why, and the other way around works the same as well. I don't know if how many people like the joke, but I enjoyed it, so that's why I call it out. So DevSecOps is definitely something that has become the thing that is represented in automating security into a CI/CD pipeline, so we can release faster in a much more safer way. Now, a lot of people who may be from a technical background may approach a DevSecOps program in a very technical way. As I was saying earlier, the security folks who may be looking at a DevSecOps program go, well, I need to upskill my team at the moment. They may not be an AppSec person or application security person. How do I upskill them? What are some of my common AppSec problems that I need to deal with in my organization? What kind of tools, maybe Sneak or other tools that I can include in my, say, the product that I have on releasing them sooner, but also I can integrate them and make sure I can block everything, which is probably a bad way to go about it, but you will hear more about it as I go into my story. Because the first time I tried running this program, I was a technical lead and it totally bombed on me. So this was my thinking when I was a technical person trying to run a DevSecOps program, because my CISO was nice enough to give me an opportunity. And I did what every technical person out there would do. I only thought about the security perspective, not the broader context. I thought, because I'm technical and I know automation, I know DevSecOps tooling, I can totally do this, because I had seen enough talks at DevSecOps or DevSecCon as on DevSecOps and all the other talks that are floating on the internet. So you know how hard this could be. Little did I know I was in for a big trouble. Now, someone who's probably a lot more of a leader and not technical as I should have been at that point in time, they would approach it from a business perspective. For example, they may look at if I go back to the Apple Store example, they might look at, okay, I need to have an App Store app available by the end of this month. But I also want to be doing it multiple times in a month so I can release updates, whatever the new update may be. It may be the new TikTok app for all I care. And you want to release updates, whether it's security updates or new features, you want to release them faster. Now, if I was the CISO of TikTok, and that was my responsibility, that's what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about shipping products in faster as well as securely. Security awareness is more around how do we make sure that developers are aware of the backlog or the tech debt that they're creating as they ignore security and keep deploying more features. Now, obviously, there is a piece of education there as well, because technically developers are not supposed to be security people. They have to be trained into understanding why security is important. How can they do security in a CI/CD pipeline? How can they do security when writing code? Now, whether it's tooling, this is where the technical aspect comes in. So the part that I missed was I need to educate people on this as well. And the last but not the least is governance and control. A lot of organizations have compliance requirements where they may be required to have some kind of a compliance checkbox or some kind of a gateway towards, before anything goes into production, that there is a gate which allows them to say, yes, this is ready for release in production. That could be a compliance or a governance requirement. Or you could be in the initial stages of deploying DevSecOps. So you may say that, hey, I want to be able to deploy multiple times into production, but I'm not really that confident in the beginning. So I want to have some kind of a control stage gate in the beginning so I'm able to monitor and review things before I let them go into production. So that's what the governance compliance angle is as well. Now, this is kind of where, I hope you have your tissues ready, because this is kind of where it's downhill from here after this. So the first chance, as I mentioned, was I was in a technical lead role, and my CISO asked me to go down the path of doing at least running an AppSec program. And because I knew DevSecOps after listening to all these talks and the buzzwords and everything, this was at least 5 years ago. So I thought, how hard could this really be? So I went down the path of everything in that list from a strategic perspective. I ignored everything except for governance and control. So I was more focused on the technical aspect. And I think some people may blame me for, hey, why would you do that? But if you kind of think about from a technical perspective, because that's what you know in the beginning. After listening to all the talks, you kind of, oh, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to focus on everything else. And that usually, let's just say, it probably takes you into a rabbit hole where you may have to backtrack quite a few times and may have to uninstall and remove quite a few security gates that you may have added, especially things like breaking a production change, especially when it's supposed to get released and there have been talk conversations about it for a while. So something to call that out over there. And as I took the approach, my learning from that was I did the mistake of going for a static code analysis as my first tool for DevSecOps. Now, for people who haven't gone through the pain, it totally sucks. Just saying that, I probably would not have gone for this, because the simple reason being, if you're trying to deploy into a CI/CD pipeline, not many SaaS providers out there can review code that quickly. Now, there are exceptions to this code as well. There's a lot more new tooling coming in. But primarily what you find is most of the SaaS providers are still expecting you to upload the code or wait a few hours before you can even go down the path of, say, testing whether security is being done right. Now, what this ends up being is that you end up having a parallel CI/CD pipeline, which is a security CI/CD pipeline, which is probably a bad idea, but to begin with, because you have to still come back, there's no shift left happening. So that's why I think that totally sucked. And I think I've said this before, and it's very controversial. I definitely feel SaaS as a field is going to die, and I'm sure I'll get hate mail for this as well from here. But if it continues to be what it is today, where we can't deploy into a production environment by running a SaaS without having to wait for a few hours, I think the SaaS as it stands today is going to definitely die. Some people may even call it's going to mutate into something else, something better. But as it stands right now, it definitely is something that needs to be changed. The other thing that I did a mistake on was I ended up doing this solo, because again, me being a technical person, I thought I could totally do this on my own. I did not include much of the other teams, developers who were supposed to be working with me, or I was supposed to work with. I definitely did not go down the path of doing that. So what that really meant is I was trying to deploy all these CI/CD pipelines in silo, and I did not get an opportunity to deploy it. Now, the last one probably is the most important one, lack of leader support. If there is no initiative from your higher leaders, say, for example, the CIO or the CTO, or maybe the CEO as well, if they are not interested in having security part of their DevOps pipeline, then you're probably fighting an uphill battle. Now, because I've left the company, I can talk about it without naming the company, of course, but the way we kind of approached it, we did the tooling, we proved the concept worked. So in our mind, yep, that concept works. I can totally see why the leaders would say yes. We tried a few times and it did not work because they said it was just a blocker. And as I mentioned, because I used SAST as the first thing and it was waiting for hours. So the DevOps people did not really want to work with us. They basically said, we can't wait for hours because our deployment only takes 5 minutes, while your security tooling takes about half a day or a day before it can come back to us. And even after that, we still have to work through and find out how many are false positives and how many are not false positives. So there's a lot of work being done for so much little effort or so little profit from a company perspective. So that totally tanked. My CISO did try, and we did look at other approaches. And by then it was basically, we had lost of support. So I was in my corner crying that this was a bad thing happen. I wanted to change it, but by then we decided let's focus on other programs and not make people remember the bad experience they've had with this. So that's kind of that was my learning. So as I was talking about earlier, at that point in time, I consider myself to be level 0 in DevSecOps skill set. I was trying to be a single person DevSecOps person. I did not think about the security culture of the organization, whether I should work on building that first. I had cloud security skills. I had the idea that, hey, I wanted to use open source because I was the only guy, I was technical. So I wanted to do open source instead of buying a tool, which sometimes, if you think about in a scale of an enterprise, it's probably a good idea to buy a tool for it instead of trying to find an open source version. Just because after a while, you're just maintaining custom code. It just does not make sense when you have, say, over 800 repositories in a GitHub account, and you have to go through all of them. And sometimes there might be some exceptions, which would make the scenario quite unique. So from that perspective, I was totally level zero at that point in time. I had no idea how I was doing, and I was grateful that I was not fired for that job. Although I did leave afterwards, but that's a different story for very different reasons. Now, I got this opportunity again in my current company, and we went down the path of we had really great cloud security skills, and we've been growing in that space quite a bit. And we wanted to start an AppSec program. And this time around, I didn't want to commit the same mistakes that I did before. So I reached out to a few people and started asking about, hey, what's the right way to do DevSecOps as a leader? And that's how I came across those strategic viewpoint for how you should do cybersecurity, DevSecOps program or security programs. Why is it important to have an understanding of the business, the security culture, and what else that goes with it as well? So that was my second chance. I still consider myself level one. Now, I did have few things. I had the leadership support, so that meant I had the budget to do developer training. It was a great security culture. There's some of the companies that have security culture, which is a great way to see this, is like you can always try with the smallest thing first, which is try and release a responsible disclosure program. Just have a link on the website to say, hey, if you do find vulnerabilities, report to us on this mailbox over here. I found that whole thing took me like 5 minutes conversation with the CTO and another 5 minutes conversation with the CEO, and we had that on the website. So from that perspective, I could say, hey, security culture is a tick. The other example was, so I had leadership support on security. The other one was we're talking to developers. Sorry, my dog. Oi. I walk away so my dog doesn't hit it. It's a dog, not a cat. So apologies for this in the beginning, but I'm gonna do it in dark room. So sorry about that. A cat came in and my dog's doing realistic. However, so I'll continue with my talk. Zoomed in camera. There you go. So the way I would approach this is I had developer training, which is available. I had budget for it. And I also had the support of my, I guess, CEO as well as CTO as well to kind of go down this path. And for a change, I was not the only person doing DevSecOps. I had a 2-people team who were willing to help me out as well. So I definitely had an initiative which was funded for a DevSecOps program. I had 2 people who can help me out as well. I had the right culture in the organization as well. If I can bring the finger, there you go. So I had the right culture for this as well. Now, this is all great, but the problem that I had at this point in time was I had the budget, I had the developers who were ready, I also had the people who were ready for supporting this, but we were in a remote world, remember? Because I just started with the company. So I've got all these resources and I've got everything, but how am I going to run a program which is fully remote? So I obviously focused on these things, but the question was going to be, how do I do this on a scale which works in a remote context? The way I went about this was, okay, I'm going to focus on education because I've got developer education budget. I want to understand how the business is going to work, which is to understand the need for what are we really trying to release into production really fast? Is it an app store, which in our case was not an app store, was something else. We are a SaaS product, but it was still around the fact that we want to be able to release products faster. How do you do that? And how do you kind of go about doing this in a way that it makes sense for the business? So I had those tools in mind, but the job that I had was to find out how do I start building a security champions program. So the way I approached it, and again, reminder, this is a remote world. Everyone's working from home. I don't have the water cooler chat. I haven't had the conversation with the folks yet. So how do I kind of approach this? I approach this in a few different ways. Because I had the support of security on a C-level, one of the first things I proposed was any new starter that joins the company, they have to go through a mandatory security awareness thing. Now, security awareness training is your usual, hey, how do I identify phishing? How do I identify spams? But in addition to that, they had to have a one-on-one session with me or someone member for my team where we talk about what are we doing from a DevSecOps perspective, especially if they're a developer. Now, you might think that, hey, but how would you enforce that? Again, leadership support was something that was crucial for this. So every new starter, who came in, which was developers specifically, they would get a rundown of what our DevSecOps tools are, what do we prefer, what are some of the resources that they can use for learning. So that worked out for new starters, but we had a development team of almost 300 people. How do we educate them on doing this activity? So we started running something called Hour of Power, which was a program, I guess, in the beginning of the remote stages. What worked out was we were trying to do a lot of activity around how do we keep a positive mindset. Now, don't get me wrong, security is not the first thing you're thinking of when you're trying to think of positive mindset. So we had to be creative. What we called out as sessions that we were running in the beginning were around how do you remain safe on the internet while you are working from home? How do you remain safe on the internet for your kids while you're working from home? Because a lot of people were sharing laptops with their kids as well. So that session was definitely something that was very well received. And it also made it realize that, hey, there is an appetite for security. We had a massive turnout. Clearly, people were worried about their kids going on the internet while they're away. And they're also worried about malware that their kids might install on the laptops as well. So from that perspective, that was a great success. But what that also meant is the whole organization got introduced to the security team. Now, this is crucial because, say, unlike, I don't know how many organizations outside of tech space have this, but a lot of organizations would have this place where there is usually a town hall or an all hands on deck kind of a meeting, or there is like an in-person catch up. So you start day one today, you walk around, you say, hello, hey, I'm Ashish, and then you CISO, would love to talk to you, and you meet other tech leaders. Now, that doesn't really happen in a remote world. So how do you approach this? That was our way. We basically started running sessions for everyone, which were not at all DevSecOps related. They were just security related. What that did was it started opening up people's mind towards, hey, security is important. Where else can we do it? So the best part that happened was we started getting requests more for people, hey, we are trying to do this. I think the best example, and such a simple case as well, someone asked us a question around SSL. They said, hey, we're trying to do TLS 1.2, but we're not really sure if we even need TLS and what is this for? Now, a lot of technical people listening to this going, but isn't that obvious? You should use TLS, but you kind of have to put yourself in a developer's hat. For them, it's literally just a configuration. They just want to get ahead. That even that simplest thing of an SSL is simply just a requirement from security, not really something that's a mandate. So I took that as a win, where people started reaching out to us for questions. Now, so we're still trying to build a security champions program. So how do you do this? So we started doing team activity where we had capture the flag. Now, there were, for people who may have gone through the pandemic and probably still do have maybe working in environments which are fully remote, there are a lot of capture the flag events that happen on the internet, which are free for anyone to join from anywhere in the world. We started hosting team-based capture the flag where anyone in the company could join. We were going to help them out, and we were going to participate as the company. And win or no win doesn't really matter, but all of us get to learn and, I guess, connect as friends. We also started hanging out at their game days as well. They had these awesome game day programs. So the first step in this was, how do you, I guess, get yourself recognized in the organization? And this was one of the ways we did. So I was surprised at how many security people where I guess don't join in on any of the, I guess, online events that happen in the organization. How many don't try and have programs which invite other developers to come in and also have a look at, hey, this is how you could be doing security, or hey, let's participate in a non-security event, show that the security team is also a fun team and not totally just up for always doing security work. So that was one way. That was the periodic team activity that we kind of go about. Now, as it kind of matured, I probably would say 6 months had passed by then, and we started to see people reach out to us for questions around cybersecurity or some things they had in their personal life. How do I secure myself at home? Because, hey, there are no stop signs, unlike our roads or tollways. There are no stop signs on the internet. So how do we remain safe on the internet? So that was really great for us. Now, at that point, what we started doing is we started introducing the concept of DevSecOps in terms of what it means, what it's like, what are we doing. So some of the DevSecOps team members that I have, they started making, I guess, little demos on what security could look like when it's automated. And any question that was asked, which was a great question in those sessions, we started giving them Uber Eats vouchers. And this basically started building towards the fact that, oh, people wanted to ask more questions. And we started running we call it the hour of power, where it's an hour-long session. It's not like a lunch and learn, because I guess there's no lunch and learn when you're not in person. So we started running these sessions on Friday evening or Friday afternoon, more like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. And that definitely helped quite a bit. And we started recognizing teams who were asking great questions. We also, as an organization, started moving towards one day dedicated in the month to reduce tech debt. Now, that was really important from a security perspective, because what that meant is we were able to go into a conversation and say, hey, what are you doing for that dedicated day that's coming up? Can we help you with reduce a security problem that you've been facing? And we started maintaining a leaderboard, started giving recognition for people who were doing an awesome job and reaching out to people who needed help. So that was something that we kind of kept working on, and we're still working on, but it reaches a certain level of maturity. Because how do you even measure something like this, right? I mean, it's great to have programs where you have reached out to people, you have others reaching out to you as well. How do you even define what success looks like in a hybrid world? The way we managed success was the number of champions that if we had more than one in a team, which was good, but I kind of would say it's an average metric. But I would probably say the number of champions we had across team, at least having one person in each team. How we win it doesn't really matter, but at least having one across a team was definitely important for us. Number of reach outs that we started getting, which was definitely quite important. The last one being recognition with transparency. We started putting a leaderboard out for how many vulnerabilities that are there at the moment that are not addressed by a particular team, but not to kind of shame them, but also to provide, hey, we are here to help. We would love to help you kind of put this down, and started rewarding people who are putting extra effort into reducing the number of vulnerabilities. Because I think I've been fortunate enough, and I've had multiple conversations around this, where a lot of people mention the fact that, hey, I don't think developers care about code. But my experience has been very different. Developers love their code and are really proud about what they put out. So if you kind of find anything which is probably vulnerable, they definitely keep an eye out for, how do I get rid of this problem? Not to get Ashish off my back or his team off my back, but because I want to put code out there which I'm proud of. So that is definitely something that I find that was really helpful. What I learned is, unlike if you go back to my previous failure, people and process definitely helps. Education is the way to go forward. Pick the right tool. So we ended up going for a software composition analysis. So I guess an example is Sneak. We ended up going for that instead of having to go for something like a SaaS tool, which worked out really well. So I was able to produce code even faster. That was kind of what my learning, and that was kind of what I wanted to share over here. If people have questions, feel free to kind of drop them in, or however you're going to reach out to me. But that's my Twitter handle on my name. Feel free to reach out for questions, or just check out the website in general. I'll just wait for someone to come online.
Thank you so much for that, Ashish, and also for Simba for joining in, who's the dog. I think everyone has, I don't know about other questions, but the questions that everyone definitely wants to see Simba. I was just sharing with them that he's the head of...
There you go, he's just here. I don't know if you can see him.
He's done for the day.
Yeah. He's done for the day, yes. He's definitely done for the day. So yeah, for people who don't know, that's the dog who was barking. And yes, that's the dog whose name is Simba.
His job is done for the day. We do have one quick question. So this is coming from Gerald. Based on your experience, if you had to name 3 top reasons why your management wouldn't want to prioritize security, what would they be? If you can't cover all 3, maybe just 1 or 2.
Yeah, that's fine. I think I can answer that. And I'll probably say the top one that comes to mind is the fact that in general, if security hasn't done a great job of explaining the risk behind. So let me take a step back and talk about this from a business perspective. I think from a business perspective, they want to release products. They want to be out out on the internet or wherever they release products. They want to be there releasing products, beating their competition, getting more customers. Now, if you are able to identify places where, say, for example, don't focus on don't focus on things which are, say, obvious. For example, if you don't want to I guess the analogy that I use is you don't want to eat an elephant in one go. You want to eat it one bite at a time. So if you focus on, which is what we did when we were having conversation with the board and the business, we focused on some of the crown jewels in the organization, which were things like, hey, what is the most important thing for us in the organization? If that was to be compromised, would we not have a business? We started our DevSecOps program over there because it was the easiest to explain how we can manage, I guess, ongoingly what we're doing in terms of the work we do, and how can we also manage to show, hey, this is really important. Now, that was the first one. The second one being some leaders just do not want security. It's considered a good to have. Now, that's not a bad thing. And I think I've spoken to a few people. They also talk about the fact that security should not be the number one problem unless you're in a cybersecurity organization. Because if you think about it, if you're into the business of releasing app stores into Apple, security is not number one. It's probably number 5, number 6, because you want to be able to go out to the market. So there were probably the 2 that come to mind. I don't have a third one in mind, but those 2 work for me.
I think 2 will take 2, but obviously, we can share 3 later. But thanks for the question as well, Gerald. And thank you so much for that talk and showing us Simba as well. Thanks so much for that, Ashish.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Perfect.